Hello, in this session, we are going to talk about manage business rules in recruiting. So, business rules allows us to default values in templates, allows us to raise messages and display those messages to the users, allows us to make calculations. There's a lot of possibilities within business rules. So you can definitely create some rules for your recruiting processes. The idea behind it is that it would make our users' life easier and automating some processes in the system. So there are two things that we can do. We can obviously create new rules, and we can also edit rules that exist. So let me show you how you can create rules in recruiting for the requisition, the offer, the application, and the profile. The process to create the rule for these templates is going to be a little bit different, but we do support rules in each of the templates. So here in the tool search, I am going to type configure business rules. This is the option. This is showing me a list of all the rules that exist. Remember that rules are also used by other modules, so you may find rules that are not applicable to recruiting, but to other modules. So if you need to create a new business rule, you can definitely use the filters here at the top if you want to find a business rule. So you want to click here in this plus sign, create new rule. And then for the job requisition and the offer templates, we want to click here in the basic scenario. And then we are going to click here to select this. Then we are going to provide a name. The rule ID will be the same, the start date. So if you want the rule to be only effective in a certain date, you can definitely change that date here. If not, you can leave this date, which will be since the beginning of time. And then here in the rule type, we don't need to pick anything, but we do need to pick the base object here. So for the rule name, our leading practice is that we always start the rule with RCM, the rule name. So that would be RCM, and then very often we use the underscore here. And the reason why we recommend starting the rule name with RCM is that if you then later on need to make a change in your rule, it is easier for you to find your rule if the rule begins with RCM, because in the future you can have multiple rules. So it could be very difficult to remember exactly the names that you have provided. Remember the names that you have provided. So if you start the rule with RCM, then you will know all of the rules that use RCM will be the rules for recruiting. Okay, so you can do, for example, requisition location, and then when you tab, and then the start date, again, it can be the same. And then here in the base object, you are going to pick either requisition or offer. So normally what I do is I start typing requisition. And now the system is displaying all the requisition options that match. Okay, so we have job requisition all. So this means that this would be a rule that would be applicable to all the templates that I have. Or you can specify a specific template. So for example, the pipeline or the standard one. These are the two templates. Okay, standard or pipeline. Or if you want the rule to be for the offer template, then you type offer, and then again you have the templates, mass offer or offer detail template, or then all. So same, all to be applicable to all the templates. This is for requisition and offer. If you need to create a business rule for the application or the profile, you are going to click here in recruiting and then pick candidate profile or pick the application. Again, always start with RCM underscore and then application XYZ, and then when you tap, this automatically gets populated with the same. And then here again, you are going to pick your template. The system is going to show you the requisition template because remember, an application is always associated to a rec template. So you are not picking the application template, you are picking the requisition to which that template is referring to. And then if it's the candidate profile, you only need to provide the role name, ID, and the start date. Now I am going to show you another page. So whenever we create a rule, we need to link that rule to the template. So it is not enough to select the template here. We need to go to a different page and we need to link that rule to the template and define really the conditions for which the rule is going to trigger. So I am going back to Admin Center and you want to search for Manage Rules. You have 4 tabs for each template. You pick the template here. The system is already showing me the rules that are already associated with my template, and we can add more rules. So one of the things that we need to define when we are thinking about a business rule is what is the trigger point for that rule? And we have rules that can be when initiating the template. So let's say when you are creating the job requisition or the offer approval, we can have a rule for the initiation of those 2 templates. We can also have a trigger point that is when we save a job requisition, a candidate, or a offer approval. And then we also have another trigger point, which is when we change a job requisition, a candidate, or an offer. We also have the possibility, as I mentioned in the beginning, to raise a message. So a message could be an alert message, a warning message to the user, or even an error message. And once you configure that message, then you need to come here and you need to assign the rule to the template and specify what is the trigger point. So let's take a look at this one, field change rule. So this means that this rule is going to trigger when something changes in the requisition. In this case, what I'm saying here is that when the field travel required changes, I want this rule to be triggered. So let's take a look at this rule. I click here in Edit Rule. Okay. So this rule is actually a raising message rule. So see here. So what am I doing here? A rule always needs to have an if and a then statement. If this happens, then something else needs to happen. So my if statement here is if the job requisition field called required travel is not equal to null, meaning that has a value, so it's not blank, then raise the message, which is just an info message. And the message says, remember to post the job after completing all required fields. So this required travel is the last field that the user needs to populate in the requisition. So what I'm saying here is when the user populates this field, then I want this message to be displayed to remember the user to post the job. Creating messages, let me just close this. Creating messages is something that it's done in Manage Data. So I'm just going to open that page, Manage Data. Here in the Create New, you are going to open this and you are going to type message, and we want this one, message definition. So the text is going to be your message, so the actual message that you want to display to the users. The external code and the name is going to be an internal ID for the message, and it cannot contain any spaces. And then for the status, you will want to make this active. And then we don't need to change any of this. So remember that a rule with a raise message action cannot be executed by a save trigger, okay? But it can be once you change a value in the requisition. So again, after you create the message, you are going to create the rule, defining the if and then conditions. So if this happens, then the message is going to be triggered. So you need to think about what is the trigger point for your message. I am going back to the rules now. So let me just open the other ones so you can see. I also have this rule here. This is an initialize rule. So this means that this is going to trigger, this rule is going to trigger as soon as the user opens the offer detail template. And then for the candidate profile, I don't have any rules just yet. And for the application, I don't have any rules either. Okay, but let me talk a little bit about, let me give you some examples. So for the job requisition and the offer, we can create business rules to post the job requisitions automatically. We can create rules to default values on fields, either in the rec or in the offer. We can raise messages, as I just showed you, and we can do calculations. These are just some examples of rules that you are going to be able to create. And then for the candidate profile, you can definitely create rules to, again, default certain values on the fields on the candidate profile. Again, we always need to specify the criteria. So if this happens, then something else is going to happen. Keep in mind that the rules on the candidate profile are not supported for the background element of the candidates. So things like the previous employment, the education, languages, and so on. Those are the background elements, and the business rules are not supported yet in the background elements. But you can definitely create business rules for the other fields. So some examples of on-save rules. So remember that on-save is when the template is saved. So some examples is when a candidate applies for a job using the internal career site, the internal career site powered by CXB, and the external career side. So the rule gets triggered on the candidate profile data and not on the application. The rule is also triggered when the candidate creates and saves a profile. Also, any subsequent changes and saves that are done in a profile will also trigger the onSave rule. And the rule will also trigger when a recruiting user creates a candidate profile on behalf of the candidate. Some on-save change rule, some on-change rules. So rules that are triggered when we change something. A few examples is when the user changes the value in the field. And also remember that we cannot use the onChange trigger to default values in read-only fields. So the user needs to have permission. So a few examples could be bringing organizational data directly into the candidate profile of an internal candidate, or determining if a candidate is entitled to relocation support based on their location. Also remember that the system does not trigger business rules on mobile apply screens for both external and new internal career site powered by CSP. However, when a recruiter makes a change in a candidate profile and saves it, the rules are triggered in the web application since it is not a mobile apply screen. So remember that in mobile apply screens, the rules are not triggered. And now moving on to the application, we can specify user actions to trigger the rules for saving and editing the job applications. The on-save rules will be when the candidate or the recruiter saves the application. The rule is going to trigger when the candidate updates an existing application or submits an application for a job. The rule cannot trigger when the candidate saves a draft. So if the candidate only saves the application as a draft, the rule is not triggering. And then we have the on-change rules. So when something is changed in the job application by the candidate or the recruiter. So some examples here. When the candidate is under the age of 18, we can create a business rule to automatically disqualify the candidate. The candidate date of birth is calculated from the current date in your business rule as the if statement, and the candidate status is changed to disqualified as part of your then statement. You also can create another example could be to create a business rule that automatically selects a specific offer template to be used when you want to create an offer approval. That could be based on the country, department, division, location, and so on. That would be this one here. Rule for offer template selection. So again, you are going to, in your rule, your if statement would be if the country is X, Y, and Z, or if the department is X, Y, and Z, then select the offer template standard, for example. You can set up a business rule to execute when an offer approval is approved or declined. This rule is going to run when the last person has approved the offer or the first person has declined, and that would be a status change. So essentially, you could say if the offer approval is declined, then move the candidate to a specific status. So that would be this one here. You can also configure a business rule to run if a candidate accepts or declines an online job offer letter. So that would be this one here. So again, if the candidate, the idea behind this is to do a status change, to move the candidate to a specific status. So if the candidate approves or declines the offer letter, the online offer letter, then move the candidate to a specific status. And then also the same can be done if you are using the electronic signature with DocuSign. That would be this one. So again, if the candidate declines or accepts the offer letter, then move the candidate to this or this status. So this is very useful because it saves a lot of time from the users that need to move the candidates around the pipeline. So by setting up these business rules, automatically the system is performing these actions and the users don't need to do this manually. So definitely take advantage of this and explore the options, talk to your implementation partner to talk about the business rules that you might want to create, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.